Chapter 1. The First Plunge. You've signed up for something you don't fully understand yet. That morning at 4:47 a.m., you're standing poolside in the dark with 11 other people who look just as uncertain as you feel. The municipal pool is empty except for your group and an instructor whose name you'll forget but whose presence you'll never shake. He's watching all of you with the kind of patience that comes from knowing most won't make it past week 2. The cold hits different than you expected. Your chest goes tight. Breathing becomes something you have to think about. For maybe 4 seconds, panic is winning the argument with your brain. Then something clicks. You're still here. You're still kicking. And that matters. You're learning the hardest part right now, your instructor says later. Not the gear, not the depth. The part where your mind stops fighting what your body's doing. By week 2, you're learning to wear 43 pounds of equipment like it's becoming part of your skeleton. The dry suit takes forever to put on correctly. The regulator feels foreign in your mouth. Your buoyancy compensator either pushes you to the surface or drags you down. There's no middle ground until there suddenly is. And then one day, hovering in the water feels like floating, and you understand that the ocean isn't your enemy. It's just indifferent. The guys in your group talk about quitting. One does on day 12. Another's shoulders give out. You just keep showing up before sunrise, and something in that consistency changes who you are on a molecular level. You're not becoming a diver yet. You're becoming the kind of person who doesn't leave when things get uncomfortable. Your girlfriend asks if you're okay. You tell her it's fine. That's not really true. You're exhausted in ways sleep doesn't fix. You're thinking about thermoclines and nitrogen narcosis at work. You're reading dive tables on the toilet. But saying that out loud makes it sound obsessive, so you keep it to yourself. Chapter 2. Into the real. Your first actual dive in open water is nothing like the pool. You descend into a quarry with visibility that tops out at 8 feet. The bottom isn't below you, it's somewhere in the murk, and your brain keeps calculating how deep it might be, how long your air will last, what happens if something goes wrong out here where there's no ladder to climb back up. Your hand brushes something and your entire nervous system launches itself into overdrive. It's an old tire, just an old tire, but the adrenaline crash afterward leaves you shaky for the next 10 minutes of the dive. This happens on every dive for a while. Your hands will touch something soft, a piece of fabric, a patch of algae, and your whole system will spike. The anticipation of finding something terrible never quite leaves, even when statistically you know you're searching for training objects, not people. Then, on your 17th open water dive, you find an actual victim. It's not dramatic. There's no music, no moment where time slows down. You just round a corner in murky water and there's a teenager who went down during a party upstream, and his body is resting against some rocks, and you're suddenly operating on pure reflex. You signal your partner. You secure the body. You ascend at the right speed, not too fast because decompression sickness is just as final as drowning. On the bank, the emergency responders take over. You sit in your car afterward and eat a sandwich and feel absolutely nothing. Not relief, not sadness, just empty. That night you write in your log, recovery of juvenile male, approximately 16 years old, confirmed deceased upon recovery. Then you don't write anything else. Your handwriting looks like someone else's. The weird part is how normal everything becomes after that. You go to work. You have dinner with friends who keep asking if you're okay because something in your face changed and they can't quite identify what. You smile and say fine and mean none of it. What you're learning is that there's a gulf between your internal world and everyone else's. And it gets wider every time you bring someone up from the bottom who isn't coming back up on their own. Chapter 3. Where fear lives now. After about 100 dives, fear doesn't disappear. It just reorganizes itself. You're not afraid of cold anymore. You're not afraid of darkness. You've learned to manage those things the way you manage hunger or fatigue. But fear of your own mistakes? That's something else entirely. You've seen what happens when someone miscalculates their air supply. You've heard the stories about the guide rope that wasn't secured properly. You know the name of a diver from 2 states over whose safety check was incomplete and who didn't come home. This is when you start carrying guilt that isn't actually yours. These are other people's stories, other people's failures, but they live in your head now like they're yours. Your teammates notice you're more careful than careful. You check things twice, then again. You're the person other divers watch during operations because they trust you won't miss something. But that trust is built on a foundation of paranoia, and paranoia is exhausting. You've stopped trying to explain any of this to people outside the unit. There's no language for it anyway. How do you tell someone that you're not afraid of what's in the water but terrified of what's in your own head? That you're addicted to clarity, that specific state underwater where everything simplifies and your job is just to function, but that clarity costs something you don't have a name for? Your girlfriend left around this time, which you expected. She said she felt like she was dating someone who was always somewhere else. She wasn't wrong. Chapter 4. The weight of saying go. They promote you to team leader, which is a nice way of saying they've decided to let you make decisions that affect whether other people's families have them at dinner. Your first operation in command is clean. Everything goes right. The missing hiker is found, helicoptered out, survives. Your team executed perfectly. The paramedics congratulate you. Everyone goes home, and you spend the next 3 weeks running that operation backward in your mind. What if you'd chosen a different entry point? What if the current had shifted while you were underwater? What if one of your divers had panicked and you hadn't been in the water to notice it immediately? You're not celebrating the success anymore. You're investigating the 5 ways it could have failed. This is the part of the job nobody really talks about, the mental archaeology. Every choice you made gets examined. Every alternate version of events gets explored. Your brain becomes a machine that runs postmortems on operations that went exactly right, and it can't stop. It won't stop. You're sleeping maybe 4 hours a night now. Your shoulders stay tense even when you're sitting on your couch doing nothing. People describe you as intense, which is polite. What they mean is that you seem like you're always bracing for something. But here's the truth. In the water during operations, you've never been more certain about anything. The rest of your life is negotiable. The decisions you make in command are not. And that certainty, that permission to trust your own judgment completely, becomes something you crave more than anything else in your life. Chapter 5. Running the system. By the time you're managing operations for the entire unit, you're not really diving anymore. You're in meetings. You're designing training curricula. You're reviewing equipment protocols and watching divers while they work, trying to read the signs of someone who's carrying too much. The diver who laughs harder after recovering a body. The one who stopped eating lunch with the group. The person whose logs are getting shorter. You know what those signs mean because you know yourself. You've seen what happens to people who absorb too much of what the water gives them and have nowhere to put it down. So you watch like a hawk. You pull people aside before things get bad. You argue for better mental health resources, better rotation schedules, mandatory time off. You're decent at keeping your team from breaking down completely, which is ironic because nobody's been watching you the same way. The knowledge you carry now is different. It's not operational knowledge anymore. It's statistical. You know the PTSD rates for long-term rescue divers. You know the divorce statistics. You know how many of your peers have developed substance dependencies. You carry all of that around like ballast. And you miss the water like it's a person you loved who moved away. You miss the simplicity of it, the problems that have actual solutions, the clarity of knowing exactly what needs to happen. Sitting in an office running a system is necessary. It's also slower suicide. Chapter 6. The man in the photograph. There's a picture on your desk. You took it 12 years ago. You're dripping wet, holding a certification card, grinning like someone who doesn't know yet what it's going to cost. The person in that photo feels like a different species at this point. Younger doesn't cover it. More innocent is closer to the truth. You've overseen 300 operations since then. Somewhere around 90% of them ended with people alive who shouldn't have been. You know the names of people who exist today only because decisions you made were right. You'll never meet most of them. They have no idea who you are. They're having children and falling in love and fighting with their partners, and none of that happens without you. and nobody will ever know it. There's something both meaningful and meaningless about that simultaneously. A situation lands on your desk today. Missing person, probably still alive. But the water conditions are pushing against your operational thresholds. The risk calculation is tight. Other people are waiting for you to decide if this is worth sending your team into conditions that are genuinely dangerous. You send them anyway. They come back. The victim comes back. You don't celebrate. You don't feel relieved. You just run the numbers again, checking if you got lucky or if you actually made the right call. And the honest answer is you might never know the difference. What you do know is that you've spent your entire adult life operating on a single principle: that human beings are worth extraordinary effort and extraordinary cost. You've held that principle in freezing water and murky water and fast water. You've never wavered on it once. But carrying that principle alone, for this long in silence, it's a particular kind of heavy. Chapter 7. What this does to your mind. The thing they don't explain in training is that diving at this level fundamentally changes your neurology. Your brain learns to split itself. One part stays human. It feels urgency when someone's dying. It responds to fear and adrenaline. But another part goes completely clinical. It runs checklists. It doesn't deviate. Counts. It checks. It never skips steps. Most humans never have to do that. You do it repeatedly for years. And that repeated splitting rewires something. You become layered. People meet the procedural version of you most of the time. The warm version exists, but it's protected underneath, and accessing it takes conscious effort now. The isolation this creates isn't something you chose. It's just what happens when your internal experience becomes difficult to translate into normal conversation. You can't describe the weight of certain moments. Language collapses, so you stop trying. You talk to your teammates instead, because they speak the same non-language. Everyone else becomes a polite performance. There's also the dopamine piece. The clarity you get underwater, that hyper-focused everything matters state, is neurologically some of the most rewarding experience your brain can have. The surface world, with all its ambiguity and noise, starts to feel pale by comparison. You're not addicted to danger. You're addicted to that specific kind of clarity. And your brain hunts for it constantly. At command levels, the burden shifts. Every decision you make lives in your memory forever. Not the successes, the near misses, the what-ifs, the phantom alternate outcomes that never happened but could have. Your mind keeps running those scenarios, even when the operation succeeded. It's not anxiety exactly. It's a cognition that's been trained so thoroughly for vigilance that it can't accept safety as final. There's always something to recheck. And then there's the moral weight. Not from failure, from success. From carrying the knowledge that you've made decisions that shaped other people's lives. That weight never gets lighter. You just get more efficient at carrying it. Chapter 8. The cost. People ask if it's worth it. The answer is complicated. You've saved lives. You've also missed other lives, relationships, experiences, a version of yourself that existed before you learned to split your brain. You've traded certain kinds of happiness for the proof that what you do matters absolutely. That proof, though, that's real. You have evidence. People are alive because you were willing to go into dangerous places and function calmly while everything around you was chaos. But the bill for that evidence is quiet, incremental, paid in sleep and relationships and the slow redefinition of what normal feels like. By the time you count the cost, it's already embedded in who you are. If someone asked you right now if you'd do it again, if you'd go back to that cold pool at 4:47 a.m. and choose this life, you'd say yes without hesitation. And you'd know, even as you said it, that you were saying yes to all of it. The clarity and the isolation, the meaning and the loneliness, the certainty that some of the best moments of your life came with a price tag you're still paying. That's not tragedy. That's not inspiration either. It's just the truth of what this particular life actually costs. And some people, when they understand the price, decide it's worth paying anyway.